everyone. Welcome back to another episode of this exclusive video interview series as part of our ebook, The Broken Candidate Experience. Here is how to fix it. Brought to you by ETHRWorld Southeast Asia in association with Paradox. I am Yasmin Taj, editor ETHRWorld International and head branded content for the Economic Times. As part of this exclusive ebook, we bring to you in-depth insights from leading talent leaders from across Southeast Asia, where they reveal some interesting narratives and learnings on how to win and retain the right talent by offering an authentic and positive candidate experience, which makes hiring easier, faster, and impactful. So the last few tumultuous years have paradoxically changed the meaning of work, careers, and workforce for us. People want to feel related and connected to the organizations they get associated with. They're looking for meaning and purpose. No longer do employers have the opportunity to cash in the immense talent available. It is indeed a candidate-driven market, and talent has indeed intensified. This year has been no different. We've seen inflation, recession, layoffs, and the cost of hiring, which have all added up to the challenges for the CHROs and their recruitment teams. In this interview today, we will look at why HR leaders need to take urgent action on their current candidate experience to attract the right talent. And to drive this very critical conversation, I'm excited to welcome Joydeep Bose, who's Managing Director and Group CHRO at Olam International Singapore. With more than 35 years of commendable working experience, Joydeep is passionate about building and developing leaders. Currently at Olam, he is responsible for providing leadership to the human resources function globally across more than 60 countries. Most recently, Joydeep has been awarded the ETHRWorld Southeast Asia HR Icons 2024 award as well. Hi, Joydeep. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today.
Thanks, Yasmin. Thanks for having me here.
Great. And looking forward to some great insights, Joydeep, on how you've been working with such a large organization where hiring, where recruitment is of utmost importance. I'd love to understand how important and critical is candidate experience for you. So moving on with the first question for this interview, as we all know, talent remains a fundamental driver of business success, Joydeep. How do you see attracting and hiring talent in the current business ecosystem? Has it become more challenging? What has changed?
That's a very important question, Yasmin. So, as HR professionals, one of the key purposes of our role is identifying, attracting, and retaining talent. Now, what is talent? So talent is that there's high performers in the organization who contribute the most. And if you look into research in this area, you'll find that high performers, someone who's in the top 15, top 10, top 15%, their contribution, especially in highly complex roles, is as much as 400 to 800 times that of an average performer. Now, let me pause there. If in an organization, if we need to get some work initiative or a problem resolved, if you're able to depute talented people, i.e. those who are in the top 15% of the pool in the organization, they bring to bear a productivity which is as high as 500 to 800 times that of an average performer. And I'm quoting research done by McKinsey here. So who would not want to appoint and identify and attract such talent in an organization? So that's the holy grail of HR. So it's very, very critical ability to identify one, then attract, and then retain them into the organization. And this becomes even more important as times and environments get more challenging and more volatile. So at no point of time can any organization say that they have achieved this objective of being able to attract and retain talent. So it continues to be the holy grail of HR.
Indeed, it is. Thanks so much for sharing that, Joydeep. As we all understand, talent is the main asset that helps run businesses today. And you said when you have top tier talent, when you have the greatest talent on board, which is 500 to 800 times more productive than a usual talent, that makes a lot of sense as why business and all other functions should invest in getting the best people on board. And that's going to be how they move forward in this competitive landscape. So thanks for sharing that, Joydeep. Talking about a candidate experience, and which is very critical when you're hiring, when you're talking about especially top talent, what kind of impact do you think a bad candidate experience can have on recruitment and business as a whole?
So Yasmin, I think let's take a step back. Why would people want to join, or do they join organizations? So they join for the kind of leadership. They look for leadership that is inspiring, that is purposeful. They join for the kind of company. Is a company doing something beyond than just its own business? Does it have a purpose? The kind of values, the kind of work environment. They join for the role, the kind of learning they can have, the growth, the development in the role. And of course, they join for the rewards. Are the rewards great? So it's mostly any one or more of these four elements that people join. So when a candidate is joining, they haven't experienced the organization like an existing employee would have. So their sources of information would be what they've heard in the media, social media primarily. Have they heard of, they know people who are working in the organization, perhaps their ex-colleagues or ex-contemporaries from the schools that they have studied in. So that's their source of information. And then when they have a certain image, they formed a certain image of the organization from the various sources of information that they have been able to access. And as I mentioned, social media is a big part of this. Then when they're connecting with the organization, which is through the website initially, and then they reach out to the talent acquisition people or existing employees in the organization, the experience they get, does that experience validate the perception of the organization? And I'm here when I say perception is a positive perception, otherwise they won't be applying to such an organization. So it's important, therefore, for organizations, one is to build that value proposition, which is typically any one or more of these four pillars, which I spoke of the four pillars earlier. And then finding a way in which that gets perceived, experienced by newcomers and people who are interested in joining the organization. And of course, social media is a big part of it. And then today you have so many such platforms through which you can communicate and create that image about the organization, which is towards its employee value proposition.
Great insights again, Joydeep. I think an employer brand, as you said, is becoming so critical for people when you want to hire the top talent. And it comes through various sources, as you said, social media, word of mouth, your other brand ambassadors, stories that you heard from probably your current friends or your colleagues. It's all out there. It's no longer hidden what an employer of choice looks like. And if in the very first touch points that you create for hiring your talent, you can match that perception. I think that is where the whole candidate experience falls into place, and how you can build on from the very first day, very first step a person takes into joining your organization. In that case, Joydeep, my next question to you is, while organizations are looking at building this candidate experience, what kind of gaps, what kind of mismatches do you think can take place in this entire process of creating that candidate experience?
So it's often, in my experience, it's the basics. So when a candidate walks in, or even when the candidate gets in touch with the talent acquisition function, what is the process by which the candidate has to interact with the organization? Is it a very complex process? Is it a whole stream of data that the candidate has to send across? Or it's very seamless, where the candidate's profile on any of the job sites can seamlessly get into the database of the company? Or if there is an assessment that is being done, what is the nature of that assessment? Is that assessment going to take a lot of the candidate's time, or it's a quick one? And is that assessment more important and interesting assessment? Today, candidates are more open to getting to doing assessments which have gaming involved in them, in some form of gaming involved in them. So we are continuously on the lookout for, if at all, an assessment, does that have a gaming component into that assessment, so that it does not become like a typical test of such sort. So we operate in geographies where people are not used to the tests, the kind of examinations that many different countries people have in schools. So they're not used to those kind of high stress environments. So perforce, we have to use instruments for assessment, which make it into a far more stress-free environment, and therefore gaming becomes important in those kind of environments. having a component of gaming into the assessment process. So the experience becomes very important in the way the candidate perceives and actually goes through the process of interacting with the organization. So that's a part of the digital connect with the organization. Now the real-time connect, when the candidate comes into the physical space of the organization, the office, is the organization prepared for the candidate, or as a candidate, does he or she have to wait for a long time? I remember many years ago, early part of my career, I walked out of an interview because I was made to wait for 20 minutes, and they were not prepared for me, and they're not even informed me that it was going to take 20 minutes for me to wait till the person was ready for the interviews. I just walked out saying that I had other things to do. So maybe it was a missed opportunity for me, or perhaps it was a missed opportunity for the organization from where I walked out from. So I think the physical experience of when the person candidate comes into contact with the organization, we have built into our processes where we at every milestone of that process, we get feedback from the candidates. How's the process been? What can be improved? That by itself is a positive action that's perceived by the candidates, because the organization is willing to listen, and candidates appreciate that, and then they are really more than happy to give a feedback on the process, whether it's positive or not so positive. So finally, and in the talent acquisition process, candidates expect to be informed of the outcome of the process as early as possible after the process is ended. And these days, for highly complex and high value roles, high impact roles, candidates, if they have not made it through, they like to get some feedback on how have they done. So if organizations often they don't see value in giving that feedback, they believe that's a waste of time. But if organizations for those kind of roles, which are high impact, high value, where typically you won't find too many candidates available, if they spend some time and invest some time in giving feedback to the candidate in terms of what the candidate brought to the organization and where were some of the gaps, that is really perceived very well by the candidates. So these are some of the ways in which one can build on the talent acquisition process and the initial moments of truth that candidates perceive when they come in touch with an organization that they are applying to. So yes, it's a very critical part of the whole employee experience life cycle of an employee, the first part. And it's, as I say, while they say that you can't judge a book by its cover, but very often that's reality. The first moments of truth are created in the first few days of the candidate's experience, candidate or the employee's experience with the organization.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, Joydeep, is like it's a lot about efficiency. It's a lot about speed, both when it comes.
I think it's also imagination. It's also imagination. How do you use your imagination? Because organizations, so the very fact that you want to create an employee value proposition, you want to differentiate yourself. If everyone is doing the same, then it's no longer differentiating yourself. So you have to, obviously, that's table stake. Having the speed, having the efficiency, but it's also imagination. How can you ensure that the candidate's experience becomes once in a lifetime for that candidate, and
how you
remembers it. So it requires imagination, requires an element of innovation, creativity to create those kind of experiences.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's about what kind of a unique experience, as you said, whether it's in the digital space when they're applying for the job, when they're getting shortlisted for the job, to moving to the physical space where they're coming in for an interview. Actually, how is that entire process stitched together, and how innovative and uniquely it's done is going to be very important for
absolutely. So I can give you another example where very recently, just 2 weeks back, we were hiring a CFO for our businesses in Gabon. Gabon is not is a very remote country. Not many people would have heard of Gabon, visiting Gabon. So what we did was we had the candidate and his wife spend a week in Gabon prior to accepting the offer. And we structured a plan for those 5 days that they were in Gabon, clearly looking at various aspects of what would be of interest to them to lead a normal life there, a social life there. So, and we structured it in such a way. And then at the end of the day, it was not so material whether the candidate accepted the offer or not, but the candidate felt that we had done our best to get him to get a realistic review, not just of the job, but also of the country where he was joining. So in this case, fortunately, the candidate accepted the offer and he will be joining us. But I think it takes a bit of time and diligence to work through that process. And the process also sometimes has to be customized for individuals. So it can't be just a generic process that applies to everyone.
Yeah, that's a very interesting example, Joydeep. I think to become an employer of choice, you have to take those extra miles, those extra steps to ensure that people see what your employee value proposition looks like and feel it at first hand. I think that's a great example to share, where you can give them a first hand experience of what it will be to working for your organization even before they join. So thanks for sharing that. Any other initiatives or plans you've put in place, Joydeep, to improve your candidate experience overall? You did give me a few examples. Can we talk a little bit more about technology, enhancing the efficiency and experience? And have you employed any such technologies in place?
Yeah, so we have adopted in the company a fit for purpose approach. So it is not just one technology across the company, depending on the nature of the business, because businesses do differ, and the markets that we address, we've got different platforms. So very recently, we employed for our tech part of the organization platform. I won't name it here, but it's a very recent tech platform that has just been there for the last 5-6 years. And one of the reasons that we employed it is we felt that the nature of people who'd be employed here would be far more tech savvy than people in the rest of the organization, because our original business is food and agri. We are supply chain managers of food and agri products. But the tech part of our organization, which includes ventures as well as engineering company. So there we realize that the people are far more tech savvy, and a large part of their experience with the company has to be through virtual means. And therefore, we looked at this platform and we felt that it was very relevant for what we wanted, and then we have just we're still in the process of implementing it. So I think that's been one of our strategies of fit for purpose, not having a common, which many organizations go for, that let's have a common platform, but we felt that may not be the right thing to do in this case. So we did that. And when we looked at assessing this platform, one of the criteria we used is that the friction between a candidate being interested, finding out information about the organization, and then applying to the organization should be as low as possible. So remove all the frictions that are there, and then how can we remove that friction, which is also assessing information about the organization, or even finding out who works in this organization that perhaps that the individual may know, whether it's from the same school or from any of the companies that the candidate has worked for. How do we make that easy for the candidate to find and get in touch? So that's one way. So removing all the areas of friction and thinking through what could be the potential friction and removing them and making it easy for the candidate. That's been one of the factors that we used when designing the system. Then I spoke about frequent feedback. So how do we ensure that feedback? And feedback has to be quick, has to be succinct and brief, and it can be usable. It should be in a usable way, and quickly, that we can make changes based on the feedback. So quick feedback is the other thing. And the third thing is about for key roles. Obviously, we can't do it for all, but for key roles where talent by nature would be few and niche, can we give, even if the individual, the candidate has not been selected, can we invest in the process and give feedback at the end of which would be useful for the candidate? So that's another thing that we employed, and we believe that it's having dividend in terms of improving the image of the organization.
It does. Thanks for sharing that, Joydeep. I think some of the approaches that you shared are extremely unique and interesting for other people to learn from. And you said especially about a fit for purpose approach. You're not painting everybody with the same brush. That's unique here, because every role requires a different approach. Every kind of, every office, every business unit requires a different approach to hiring. I think that's interesting. Also, the fact that you said, it's about removing all the friction, making it a seamless process, working on frequent feedback, and making changes accordingly. I mean, how often are you using that feedback to make changes to your processes? I think that's going to be that's an interesting input as well. And as you said, finally, based on key roles and requirements, how are you tailoring and customizing your hiring process for specific people, the whole to create a candidate experience at work. So great insights for people to learn from. Thanks for sharing that. Finally, coming to the question on ROI and impact, I think that's what every business looks at these days, Joydeep. How are you looking at, measuring the ROI or impact of a good candidate experience? Have you put any specific metrics in place to evaluate the return on investment?
I think there's still work in progress. So one, of course, is the measuring the experience and seeing whether that experience is improving over time, and in ways and means in which we can improve the experience, the overall experience, the candidate experience. The other metric that we use is the quality of hire, though not linked to candidate experience, but in some way, if you improve candidate experience, you would probably have better candidates and more candidates applying. So your quality of hire should improve. So we measure quality of hire. Okay. We also measure our access to candidate pools. So how many candidates are applying to us directly, and that's big, and that's a big portion that we would want to increase over the years, so that we have candidates applying to us directly than us trying to access job sites for candidates. So direct applications from candidates is a good measure of your employer brand and its attractiveness to the talent pool out there. So these are some of the things that we are measuring today, but clearly we can improve on it, and to really evaluate what we have invested or what we are investing in terms of time, and we be getting sufficient returns from that. We've not gone there yet, but probably that's a work in progress for us.
Great. I think measuring the quality of hire is a very interesting point, and I haven't really heard that, otherwise, because people don't tend to look at that. So if you're creating a better candidate experience, are you getting better candidates to join your organization? I think that's an interesting metric side that the people listening in here would love to take back and apply in their organization as well. So thank you for sharing that, Joydeep. Just before we close, your final notes, if you have to give one piece of advice to hiring and recruitment leaders and how they can stay competitive in today's competitive talent landscape, what would that be?
I think members of the talent acquisition team, they should believe in the organization that they're working for. And once they believe and they're passionate about their organization, then automatically that passion gets communicated to people that they are targeting. Yes. So because they are often the first point of contact for candidates. Yeah. And unless they see themselves as key and critical members of their organization, who understand the organization, believe in the mission and values and purpose of the organization, it becomes extremely difficult for them to convince potential candidates about the new organization that they are looking towards. So I think that would be my advice. So, and I think everything else flows from there.
Absolutely. That's a great point to end this conversation with. Thank you, Joydeep. I think, as you said, it's the candidate experience says a lot about what kind of employer brand you're building in the market, how you're being perceived by people. Are you matching up to that? It's about being imaginative. It's about being very innovative with your approach towards creating that experience. You can match the speed, you can match the efficiency, but you have to also be unique in the ways you create that experience, which is very, very critical in today's time. So thank you for sharing such great insights, Joydeep. It was a pleasure hosting you on this episode.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me here once again. Thanks, Yasmin. It was an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure the people listening into this episode have a lot of takeaways that they can take back to their organizations and apply to create a better candidate experience and fix that broken candidate experience that is hampering their growth as an employer of choice. So once again, everyone, thank you for watching. Until the next episode, take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.